Welcome back to my shop. My name is Guy, and this is the second video of building a curved front buffet. This time I'm going to make the back panels, the side panels, and the curved front panels for the buffet. They're all veneered, and I also make the two curved door panels for the front using a bent lamination process. There's a lot of work to do, so let's get to it. I'm going to start off with veneering the back panels for the case. Now there's three of them, and I'm going to be using 1/4 inch MDF. MDF is a very good substrate for this. It's notoriously flat, it's extremely stable, and it holds glue well. This is the veneer I'm going to be using for the panels. Now this is just regular flat sawn walnut veneer, not cheap, but not really expensive either. I'm going to be doing both sides of the panels. You have to make sure to do both sides so there's equilibrium. If you put it on one side and the glue dries, it'll stretch the board out this way. So I want to put it on both sides. Now this piece is about 78, 79 inches long. I need to get 28 pieces out of this that are about 34 inches long or so. I don't want to try to cut this all at once. I'm going to grab about, I don't know, 4 pieces maybe. So I've got the mark here, and it's not important that this is perfectly square because I've got plenty of extra. So I'm going to take this. This is just a piece of wood. This is edge jointed here, and I've got some sandpaper underneath here to keep it in place. And I'm just going to put this on here like this and eyeball it so it's about square, making sure it's even on the ends. Put that on there. I'm going to take a veneer saw, and this is a veneer saw. It can be used as a push or pull, but I'm just going to make a very light scoring cut and then start applying more pressure. I want to make sure I keep this flat up against here. Now I've got the upper section of this flitch, and going through on the one side it's got this knot hole. Now I need to get rid of that, so I've marked up a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch here. I'm going to take about 4 of these, get them lined up as good as I can. Then I'm going to take another beam. This one's much longer than the last one I used. Just line up those marks and then take my veneer saw and cut off that edge. Now all the edges of all these pieces of veneer have this little stripe of sapwood right here. I want to cut that off too. The reason I'm veneering this instead of just buying 1/4 inch walnut plywood, so that stuff is usually spiral cut, not flat cut. It's got a really weird grain pattern, and on a piece of furniture like this, I just don't want this. I want to have control over it. I got all the veneer in stacks laid out of 5 pieces, and this will give me my 20 inches, actually a little bit more than that. I'll cut them down a little bit later. So I need to edge joint these, and I'm going to use this jig right here, and all it is a couple pieces of plywood, a couple bolts through the ends. I'm just going to stick these in here like this. Make sure they're all flat to the bottom. And then tighten these down. Now I can simply take this over to my joiner, run this edge, and make sure I get all those planed really nice and flat. I have a packet of the veneer here, and I'm just going to take a couple pieces and I'm going to line up those edges, and I'm going to start to tape them, and I'm going to go about every 6 inches or so. I want to make sure that that seam is tight. I want to make sure that it is not overlapping. That's very important. And this is the back of the veneer, not the show face. I'm going to go along its length with one big long piece. As I put this down, it's very important again to make sure that there's no overlaps in the veneer. Let me flip this over. And that's good. It seems nice and tight and there's no overlaps. So I'm going to flip it back over, and I'm going to continue to add pieces to it till I get my width. Well, I've got all the blue tape on the back. Let me flip it over here. All right. I want to make sure that all my seams are flat, there's no overlaps. I also want to sight down and see if I can see blue coming through anywhere. And I cannot, so I'm good. The next thing I need to do is start putting some veneer tape down, which is this, which is a sticky backed paper. You wet it with water. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side, except using that. And I've got a little postage stamp liquor, and I've got some pieces already cut up. So this is about the same as I did on the other side, except I want to make sure that I make sure it's flat. And I take it and I stretch it just a little bit across its width. And when it dries, that'll help pull the seam together and keep it tight. And after I do the pieces across the seam like this, I'll go and put one going all the way across. I've got all the seams done on this panel right here. Now I know my piece of MDF that I'm putting on here is 20 inches wide. This, I don't know how wide it is. I know it's more than 20 inches, so I'm going to go over here. I want to make it just a little bit smaller at 19 3/4. Then I can take my beam and lay it on those marks. Just make a single cut to cut it to width. All right, so that's going to work out well. I need to make another one of these for the other side, and then we will glue it to the substrate. Now I'm going to press the veneer to that substrate using my vacuum bag. If you're not familiar with this, I've used it many times before. I'm going to go over it again real quick. What it is, this is a vinyl bag. I've got a plating down here. There's a hole here, which a hose is hooked up to my vacuum pump. What this does, when I turn it on, it'll suck the air out of this bag after I seal the end. It'll go through these cracks and press down on the panel itself. Well, I've taken the blue tape off of both of those pieces of veneer that's going on my MDF here, and I have sanded this just lightly to 80 grit, just to rough up the surface a little bit. Next, I'm going to apply some glue. Now, this is a cold press veneer glue. It's a PVA glue, just like Titebond is, but it has extra solids to help prevent it from coming up through the pores of the wood, because this is only a 42nd of an inch thick of veneer. So I'm going to spread some of this on. I've got a glue roller. I want to get a good coverage on this piece. Not too much, but I don't want to be able to see the MDF underneath the glue. Well, that's about right there. So I always want to make sure also that you put glue on the substrate and not on the veneer, because if you put it on the veneer, it's just going to cup, warp, and twist like a nightmare, the veneer that is. So I want to keep one edge of this fairly lined up with the other edge. This piece of MDF is bigger than the veneer is, so I have a little bit of extra. I'm just going to press this in place. I'm going to flip this whole piece over and do the other side. Now I've got a piece of masonite in here. It's got a lot of wax on it, and that's to act as a caul. And I've got another piece right here, again with wax on it. And this is a little bit smaller than the piece of MDF, while the one underneath is a little bit larger. I don't want to curl this around. Now to close up the end of this, there's this plastic tube, and it's held in place with these little Velcro tabs. And then I've got this piece, which is like a C-clip, and that goes over the plastic tube. I'm going to start in the middle here, making sure to keep it flat up against that plastic tube. And now I can start the pump. Now when I turn this on, I have the auto cycling mode, and it's going to keep drawing air out of the bag until it hits about 24 to 25 inches of mercury. It'll stop there. No matter what, it's going to lose a little bit of air here and there as time goes on. And as that pressure drops, I think it's below 22 or 23. Actually, I think I have it set at 21. It'll come back on and draw the extra pressure out. Well, the pump is shut off. It's at about 24 inches of mercury, and there's about 5 tons of pressure on here. There's a bunch. I'm gonna leave it in the bag for 40 minutes to an hour, give or take, and then take it out of the bag. With one of the panels on my bench, I need to start getting that tape off. And that's a pretty easy process. I'm just gonna moisten this tape on here. I have one of the styles on my bench here, and on the inside of these panels, I need to put a rabbet. 1/4 inch barely fit in here because this is a 1/4 inch. This was actually a 1/4 inch, and it was pretty snug. I didn't want that snug of a fit when I'm trying to put these panels together. So I needed to take off 2 thicknesses of the veneer, which is like a little bit less than a 1/16 of an inch. So I have my table saw set up with a dado stack, and I'll show you that in a second. So this is a pretty standard setup for how I do rabbeting on a table saw in most cases. I've got a dado stack set up here, and it's a little bit less than 1/16 of an inch high. I've got a sacrificial fence. I got 3/8 of it exposed. And I also have these Jessom hold downs here, which are real nice to making sure that I'm keeping the work flat against the table. The side panels for this are a little bit different. There's going to be a duplicating pattern that goes all the way around, and there'll be book matched panels. So the sides, I've already cut the MDF for the sides. I've already cut the backer veneer, which is the same flat cut walnut that I used before on the back panels. But on the side panels, I've got this to deal with. I took the face veneer and the backer veneer and jointed the edges on my joiner just like I did before, and also taped it up just like I did before. And this is the first panel that's getting ready to go in the bag. Well, here's the side panels out of the clamps. I've cleaned them up, I've scraped them. I need to prepare these panels the same way I did the back panels. That is, I need to cut them to size, width and length, and create that rabbet on the back edge so they fit into that groove I made before. Well, here's the 2 ends of the piece all dry fit together, and they came out really nice and square. I really like the pattern on this veneer. It came out really nice. Now to do the curved panels, this is very similar to doing the flat panels. I've got the exterior, this is the left one, this is the right one, because remember there's 2 curves on the outside. This is a middle piece, and these are going to be the 2 inside pieces. Now I've got a form over here that's basically just a web frame form. It's kind of built almost like an airplane wing with a covering over the top of it of hardboard. And then I've got 4 pieces of this, which is Italian bending ply. It's 1/8 inch thick, and actually it's kind of bent that way already. So I've cut these panels. There's going to be 2 of these. So the way it's going to be done is there'll be 2 of these. This will be sandwiched in the middle. This will be on the inside, and then this will be on the outside. Now for the glue for these curved panels, I'm going to be using a pre-catalyzed resin glue. And it comes in a powder form like this. You mix it with water. The benefit to this is it leaves a hard glue line. Unlike a PVA glue or the cold pressed veneer glues or Titebond, those will tend to creep and you're going to get some spring back. Now I've done this a couple times before, and using this type of glue, and I keep it in the clamps for about 5 to 6 hours with a heat pad over it, that bonds that so stiff there's no spring back to it, which is what I need. Well, I have the packet all glued up and taped up. I've also got these 2 pieces of blue tape here. These 2 little marks here on either end. Those are the center line, and those are going to correspond to the center line I put on the bending form. So now I need to get this in the bag. Now, I don't know if you can see it on the camera through this bag, but this says left, and here's a line. There's a mark on the other side. I just want to make sure I got the bottom of the panel on that left side for this particular one. I'll get on the form, get those lined up by eye. I'll put another call on top of it. All the air is evacuated from the bag and the form is held up real nice. So it's about 60 degrees in the shop here this morning. I need this to be about 70 degrees, so I'm going to throw a heat blanket on it and I'm going to leave it in here for about 6 hours. I've taken the curved panels out of the vac bag and they came out really, really nice. Absolutely no spring back, and they follow that curve in the front perfectly. So these are the way the panels are going to lay out. This is going to be one of the side panels. There'll be a leg here. It'll transition to a curved panel. There's a flat panel. I did this off camera. It's basically the same thing as these other panels, except it's flat with the same veneer. It goes into a curved panel, and then this panel will be on the side. This gives me a really good idea how the whole thing is going to lay out when it's done, and I'm really, really happy with the way it looks.